Hi, my name is Luey Northern, and I wrote, co-produced, and co-engineered the song Dad Bod out on all streaming platforms. It's out. Go listen to it. Dad Bod. Still here with my bad flaws. Still battle with depression like anybody. I ain't writing a sad song. I don't know. It just in that moment, I was kind of just considering how I felt about myself, physically, emotionally, and like the fact that I, as a person, don't feel super comfortable kind of complaining about these things, in an open forum, unless I'm using music. And I feel like that's kind of a part of the problem. It's a kind of a part of the underlying issue that a lot of men are facing, in just not feeling like we have that space to be open. That's why that line of like, still battle with depression like anybody. I ain't writing a sad song. Like, it's just to kind of exude my lack of complaint while also complaining, which is kind of what I feel like we do. I ain't asking for your sympathy. I don't know how. I'd rather get mad. I think as a man, it's a lot easier to express anger than anything else. And I feel like that's what a lot of men use to express all the bad feelings that they're feeling, even though emotions are like a multitude of different things. You know what I'm saying? Anger is the one that's acceptable as a male. So I don't know. That's just kind of what I wanted to talk about with that line specifically. I'd rather get mad long as niggas know that I'm real, baby. And they know that when I have problems, I could deal with it like a real man, all solo like the band gone. It's kind of lonely being what the archetype of like a man is supposed to be. You kind of just in it by yourself. And if you're doing that, then you're doing it the right way, is I think what we're taught oftentimes. So yeah, I think it's just easier to like kind of take all of that within yourself, deal with it alone, and like not ask for any assistance from anyone. And if you do that, you get the cool points of like being quote unquote a real man, I guess. Lack of empathy is interesting. They never taught us how to really handle intricacy of emotions, and now we open with women, we lack thoughts. I think the paradigm of masculinity within itself has definitely had detrimental effects on men in general's relationships, but like my personal relationships with women, like for sure. I think trying to fit within, that pattern of what we are supposed to be as men forces us into this area of emotional unintelligence. Cause like, it's not just not taught the proper way to be a man. It's deeper than just not being taught. It's like actively sought after to not know what it is to be a man and properly do that. And I think that's very interesting because it feels like there's a fear that comes along with acknowledging one's own feelings, acknowledging one's own emotions, and like delving into what that is. And I think that fear is what's so detrimental to us as a culture of men, women trying to date one another, like as far as the heteronormative spectrum of things goes. Motherfuckers gotta work on that for real. Dissonance enters in the end, we take the person that we handhold with as someone to put our hands on. Domestic violence runs rampant in, not just the black community, all communities for real. And I honestly don't even think that's talked about enough. I know that's probably a controversial topic because people think it is, but like, I don't think you'd understand how common it is to see domestic violence, man on woman, woman on man, regardless, just all of it. And I think the lack of emotional intelligence that's pushed on men in general contributes to this, because we don't have any way to regulate these things. And when you try to seek out ways to do so, it's like you lose face in society. I think that's changing now, but I definitely was afflicted by seeing what that lack of emotional intelligence leads to, which is physical violence oftentimes. That don't make you to a man strong, but niggas swear they had the pants on, and niggas swear they want submissive women but don't never really have a plan for them. I think it's very interesting to watch men be forced into this role of leadership. So much so that like when they arrive there, You know what I'm saying? They feel it is their right to lead and to be out front, regardless of like how in control of the situation that they are, socially, financially, whatever it may be. You just a man, so you supposed to be out front handling shit. And it's like, bro, like, some dudes ain't even built, like, some men aren't even built to be the head of anything. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean that as a slight. I'm not even like coming at anybody in a negative manner. I just mean like, hey man, maybe not everybody's supposed to be in charge. It's actually one of the things I saw in the military is people getting pushed into leadership positions, people getting pushed to promote and progress and be in charge of people when like maybe they just shouldn't have. You know, I think we need to take gender roles out of what leadership is supposed to be and promote the best leaders. And that's not just like a work thing, that's like an in life thing. Not everybody's supposed to be in charge of everything. But what you end up having is a bunch of dudes who just think, oh, I'm supposed to be running shit, so I'm running shit. And you be like, all right, bet, what's the plan? I don't know, but I'm in charge. It's really a terrible way of looking at shit, in my opinion. Keep the chip away from shoulders with leadership. If you are in a command form, I think being put in the in charge role can do things to a person. And depending on who that person is and how they process things and how they handle things, it can be for the better or for the worse. You know what I mean? But I feel like if you are going to be in charge of something, and obviously this song relates to relationships between men and women, but it can honestly, you know, relate to whoever. Any person who's put in that in charge role, it's important to be like cognizant of who you are, how you're operating, how you're dealing with people, and like kind of check yourself on these things, because you know, good leadership is good followership. I think a lot of people just attribute being in charge to bossing people around and giving orders in relationships, in the workplace, regardless of where it is. And I think that's problematic. For real, for real. If you're not able to stop, take a look at yourself, who you are and how you're being with people, you're inevitably going to cause some issues in whoever you're in charge of, whatever it is you're directing. I think that's a really important thing that I learned the hard way in relationships, in the military, at jobs, just life experiences. Is it gay to hope that my dick big? Because that's the measure of a man's going rate. Obviously, there's a bit of an innuendo with the, you know what I'm saying, size measure, blah, blah, blah. But also, like, the energy that we should be spending on our emotional management is often misplaced to saving face with the people around us, to, you know, presenting in the most masculine way. And so much of that contradicts itself on a consistent basis. It contradicts itself in such a way that when you really start to break these things down and look at them, you understand how preposterous this paradigm is. Homophobic, yet we so enclosed in the box of to be a man for a day. It's notable that you are so exposed to the toxins, they're ample. When I was growing up, homophobia was almost just a part of what masculinity was supposed to be, which is probably the reason why my generation has that stamp of it being a toxic thing. I think we've come to a place where we learn that masculinity within itself is not an issue of toxicity, that true masculinity within itself is the art of like uplifting those around you, leading, being forward, etc., etc. But I think, you know, for my 93 babies, you know what I'm saying, anybody who kind of came up in that era, you saw homophobia, you saw picking on anybody who wasn't, you know, a part of what we have deemed to be by and large what masculinity is, and you're exposed to that on just this consistent basis. It's really not a helpful way of existing, and I'm pretty glad to see it being phased out in the public eye, because it needs to. I know the rage and the misquotes in the podcast, but a sample. Anybody who has one of these and an audience, a following, can kind of shape and mold and push people toward the direction they want, utilizing those emotions, especially with younger men, because of the lack of regulation on internal that we're taught, you know, at a certain age. You can take 16, 17, 18-year-old boys and men and push them into doing whatever you want through the power of your words. And I watch people kind of use their platforms to force people into a culture that doesn't really benefit them. And oftentimes that's based in the speaker's own insecurities, fears, and skewed perspective of what the world is. But it plays upon these people who've felt outcasted or been pushed aside in society, and then turns them into a consumption tool for which these other people build their brands on. And it's not healthy to the individual. It never is. I could show you Pain and the listeners are those who go with Tate, cause this nigga gave him a new sort of place. It's an echo chamber of emotions and affirmation to earn, to procreate, nothing more. It's the continuous story that we've all heard of, like, real men get money, work real hard, die, and support a family, and that's all they're good for. And if you're a real man, you're this, you're that. And I specifically name dropped Andrew Tate on this one. I mean, one, because it rhymed, but two, because it fit. Like, it really fit the whole narrative of what I've seen, like, younger guys in comment sections on social medias. You can see the anger and the pain in these people, and they've kind of been drawn into this hyper masculine false concept of who they are supposed to be and what they're supposed to do. And it within itself does create an echo chamber of self-validation of what men are, how women are, how men should interact with women, blah blah blah. And it makes me angry, but I do feel like there's enough social conscious kind of pushing toward the opposite of that. So that's reassuring within itself. It's just, we all got work to do on that. Growing incels because of padlocks on our inner selves. It's a scam, y'all, but I'm just a man with a dad bod, Hypermasculine culture within itself is a scam. It's not a sustainable thing. It's not a sustainable way of existing. It burns out men. It's part of the reason that men have such a high suicide rate now. It doesn't help. Hypermasculinity within itself does cultivate a place for people like incels and incel culture to kind of come through and lead other people who feel alone or who feel lost to that way of thinking. As a person who's been afflicted by this culture personally, I can't help but notice that I don't fit the mold of who should and shouldn't be speaking. I hope you've enjoyed this lyric breakdown for our single Dad Bod. It was an amazing experience co-producing this with my business partner Timeless and co-engineering it with Wino Willie. Much more music on the way, so please hit the follow and subscribe button to stay tapped in with us. Thanks for your time. Peace.